All right, today's video, I'm going to be talking about a money-making principle called CANI. If you've never heard of CANI before, Tony Robbins kind of made it famous. And the CANI principle is what you use to grow and change anything in your business or your personal life. And it doesn't matter if you're in real estate or running any other business, the same principle applies. I can't wait to share the CANI principle with you. So the big question I'm going to answer in this video is what you should be using the CANI principle on so your business grows faster, more cost effectively, with the least amount of hassle as possible. True to form, if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, click the subscribe button and let's get started. All right, so let's start off by talking about what the CANI principle is. If you haven't heard of it yet, it stands for constant and never-ending improvement, okay? The reason why I like the CANI principle, because this is what we should be doing with our business and our life anyway, is developing a roadmap or something that we have in place to make sure we have constant and never-ending improvement. Now, this is important for a lot of reasons. And from a business standpoint, it's important because the things are moving at such a rapid pace right now with all the changes in AI, marketing, technology, and how we build our businesses, that if we're not focused on constant, never-ending improvement, we don't have that as a core value in our company, we could be obsolete overnight. There's stories of this happening right and left in our industry like crazy, specifically in the real estate industry. If you look at what has happened with all of the people that got involved in real estate during COVID, real estate was easy. A lot of them became top producers overnight, even though they were newer into the business. And now what's happening is they're facing the reality of having to reinvent themselves, learn the core skills of marketing, sales, the art of persuasion, and leading with technology to build and scale their business, and they've never had to do any of this before. So it's kind of like being a fish out of the water, which can be scary because you feel like you can't breathe. So to fix that, you have to be improving and doing it at a rapid pace. That's why I love the CANI principle. On a personal level, the reason why I love the CANI principle is because life can get crazy. What can happen in life is you can put yourself in a position where you feel all this fear, anxiety, and you're wondering what your next step is, or you're wondering what's going on in your life or what's happening. But if you apply the CANI principle and develop a method to improve different areas of your life, life can actually be more fun. It can be less anxious if you have the right systems and process in place for improvement. And most likely, when you're not bored, okay, it's really hard to be depressed. When you are bored or when you feel out of sync, right? That's when all these crazy thoughts start popping in our head, right? Usually people don't get depressed when they're having fun in life and in business. So I'm hoping you find this principle that I'm going to go over with you important not only for your business, but for your life. So let's dive into the CANI principle and to the next level on actually how to use this in your business. So I think it's easy just to talk about constant and never-ending improvement. Like we should be improving, right? That's I think common sense to a lot of business people. We always have to be improving. If we're not growing, we're dying. We all heard that before. But the big question I have is like, what should we be improving? And how do we develop a method to do this in a way that's productive so we're not just throwing darts at a wall, but we're actually aiming and hitting our target more frequently? And ironically enough, I actually turned to the scientific method to make improvements, because if you think about the scientific method, that's really what it's about. And I heard a case study that I thought was really, really powerful that I want to share with you. It's outside of the real estate industry or maybe other industries that I work with, but I think it was really, really powerful. And that was the story of Noom. Noom is one of the fastest growing health companies on the planet. They have an application where you sign on to the application, they come up with a custom program for you to achieve your weight loss goals. And they developed a whole bunch of amazing stories. And I had a chance to listen to, or I should say read an article on what made Noom successful. And one of the things that made Noom successful was this CANI principle. But what they did is they actually applied the scientific method to CANI, where they would literally A/B test everything. They took nothing for granted, to their websites, to how they position the website, to the client journey, on like what the client saw, depending on how they answered the questions on the website. It gave them a different environment or led them down a different pathway to how they fulfilled the service, literally they just A/B tested everything, and as a result, they came up with something that was standardized but felt customized and tailored. And it really hit me because that's why they went to and became a $500 million company. And so I started thinking about how this relates to my real estate business and how this relates to the other businesses that I run. And I started thinking of it through the key performance indicators that we should be tracking to innovate on. And that's the first lesson. The first big lesson I want you to take away is all of your innovation and improvements should start with data. Because if you're starting with what you think should be improved or what you think your clients like or don't like, and you don't have actual KPIs or key performance indicators to actually help you, help be your guiding compass, if you will, then we don't always know if what we're innovating is going to have the maximum effect. And the problem with that is we have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of resources that we're working with, and a limited amount of energy in a given day, right? And so we need to make sure that we're using those resources properly to make sure we're getting the best bang for our dollar, so to speak, or the best bang for those resources. So how do you do that? Well, you focus on KPIs. The next big question then is what KPIs should we be tracking and focusing on and innovating around? And this is where I came up with, in 2014, a master checklist that I've been using as the core of all of my innovation and growth of my businesses. And largely, one of the reasons why our real estate business went from 0 transactions to over 1,000 transactions within about a 3-year period. And we were able to have an unbelievable ride and exit with that independent brokerage. And what we're using now to grow our new team with EXP. And same methodology that I used for all of our businesses, for our coaching consulting businesses, or all the businesses that are with our underneath our holding company. We use the same methodology. And so I'm going to break these down for you. There's actually a total of 9. And I believe that if you start tracking these, you're going to end up in a really great place to know where to innovate around. Okay, so the first one is how many leads you're generating. You see, you should know how many leads you're generating, but that you need to hit your ultimate sales goal. But sometimes it's hard to figure that out. So you need to know how many leads you're generating to track against your goal. So the key is the goal versus the actual. Are you tracking the leads? How many are coming in, what the goal is versus what you're actually generating? The next one is your outreaches. Are you tracking how many calls, how many texts, how many emails are going out, okay, to actually move those leads down the pipeline? And what is the goal versus the actual? Behind that is your conversations. How many conversations are actually happening, right? Going from your marketing and automation and the different outreaches that you're using by phone, by email, by text, to then actually having conversations with you or your sales team. Now, and what is the goal and what is the actual, right? Now, next is how many times you actually had a conversation versus how many times you actually made an offer. And that offer in most cases would be setting up an appointment initially. Now, if you're selling something different, an offer might be something that comes before an appointment, right? Depending on what you're talking about or how your value ladder works. But particularly in the real estate business, usually the offer is an appointment, or a lot of other coaching consulting type businesses or agent attraction type businesses, the offer is setting up an appointment, right? So, or a free consultation or whatever it may be. The next thing you need to be tracking is how many appointments you're setting and what your goal is versus your actual, right? And then behind that, the next one would be your presentations. And this is important to track these separately because you want to know how many appointments that you're setting versus how many presentations are actually showing up. Because there's always going to be a problem between how many appointments you're setting and how many actually show up. And then you want to track your presentations, okay? And what's a little bit of a pro tip here is tracking the quality of your appointment, getting your team to think about the different types of appointments, because you all have a target market. You all have a target audience. And so if you start tracking almost like a 5-star review on the quality of that appointment based on a specific set of criteria, it's going to help you, it's going to help your marketing and your sales team, or your business development team and your sales team, be on the same page. And so for an example, let's say you set the appointment. Is that a 1 or a 4 appointment, or a 1 or a 5 appointment? And what criteria are you setting to determine the level of the quality of that appointment? So for an example, is that a 1 because they only meet 1 point of your criteria, or is it a 3 because they met all 3 points of your criteria? And the better job you do actually qualifying if it's a good appointment or not, and being on the same page as what a good appointment is and what a good appointment isn't, trains your staff on what the goal should be. So that's a little bit of a pro tip. Now your presentations. Presentations are really, really important to track, because this is when you're actually making the next offer. The next offer may be going from free consultation to contract, as an example. So how many times are you making that presentation versus getting the actual contract? And now that you got the contract, knowing what the value of that contract is, okay, short-term and long-term, and tracking the overall value of that contract. And then from there, are you getting more business from that contract? Are you getting referrals from that contract based on how you're servicing them, et cetera, and even if you're asking for referrals? And then now, how many people that you've done business with, how many of them are actually becoming what I call an ambassador? Meaning like they've either, maybe you didn't do business with them, they're a vendor partner, but how many ambassadors do you actually have? Particularly from your clients, because if you start getting a lot of ambassadors from your clients, that's a really good sign. You should have around 15 to 20% of those people becoming ambassadors. So if you look at this checklist and you think through this and you set goals versus actual, and you look at your goal and you start working towards your actuals, making each one of these better and better, and applying the rule of CANI, constant never-ending improvement, to these different metrics, and then thinking through the scientific method and how to use the scientific method to make these improvements, I want you to think where you could be. So let me give you a practical example of what this looks like, okay? Let's say, as an example, you're presenting to a lot of people. Maybe you're going out on a buyer consultation or a listing consultation, but for whatever reason, you presented to 10 people, but you got 0 contracts. You obviously have a closing ratio problem. The key is to figure out all the different solutions that could go into improving that ratio. And it's important to list them all out. So that could be your listing presentation. That could be the script you're using in conjunction with your listing presentation. That could be how you're communicating, your tone, your pace, your hesitation, your modulation. That could also be you not asking for the sale. So it's important to list all of the possible reasons why your listing presentation or your presentation in general is not working, and then start putting them in order priority of what you want to fix to get that metric up, leading to more sales. And once you then put them in priorities, you create projects and timelines and checklists on how to improve that. And so what you would do is, using a version of the scientific method, once you've outlined those things, is start tracking what's actually happening in a finite period of time or number that you're going to actually do that thing before you change it. So for an example, you're going to go through all these changes, and then you're going to do another 10 presentations and see what the result is. And what you're going to want to do is make sure you don't make too many changes at one time, because if you make too many changes at one time, you're not going to actually know what fixed the problem. And so this is where then you do a little bit of A/B testing, where you drill down and you say, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I get through my close 3 times. I'm going to make sure I don't ever leave my close 3 times. And that's going to be my game plan for the next 3 presentations. I'm going to focus on getting better at my closing. And then you do that over 10 presentations. So rule of thumb, I like to look at this process and think through all of the areas and set a plan over about a week or whatever it takes to hit that number. So sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's a month. So here's what I promise you, though. If you get to the level of actually being able to A/B test like this is how you take your business to the next level. This is where you see people going double and tripling. Most people never make it to this point because they're not even thinking this way. They don't even have the foundational principles. They're trying to figure out what their next move is. They're not tracking anything. And therefore, their business stalls or grows or doesn't grow. So it's one thing to say, I need to improve. It's another thing to actually have a framework for improving. So I'm hoping this first part of this video helps you. In the next part, I'm going to break down a more detailed process of how you can actually make improvements more effectively. So now that I gave you the 9 things you should be tracking, here's the 7 steps, okay, of actually how to do this effectively. All right, so the first step is identifying what KPI you want to work on. The second step is once you've identified what KPI you want to work on, you want to list all of the possible outcomes or what the outcome you're looking to get. Because if you don't list what the outcome you want is, clearly you could be doing a whole bunch of different things that might not lead you to what you want. So list the outcome that you're looking to get. So number 3 is list all the potential solutions that are going to get you to the outcome. And you want to think through the big things and the little things. Number 4 is put them in order of importance, right? What's the most important that you think is going to lead you to the outcome that you want? And start with that first. Number 5, develop a finite period of time and data that you're going to track against. So meaning, I'd like to use the rule of 100. So for example, I think that in some cases, if you have too much of a small sample size, it can lead you to a false outcome. So for an example, 100 page views or 100 presentations or 100 conversations or whatever you're doing within your marketing and sales process that's going to help you make sure you have enough data to know if what you're doing is working or not. Number 6, really important, is monitoring the results and making changes along the way. So it's not that you can't get the feedback on your way to 100 and make changes along the way, as long as you're not doing that in too many different areas and testing too many things at the same time, so you don't know what changes are actually affecting the outcome. And then lastly is document everything. Because what ends up happening is if you don't document everything that you're trying and doing, almost like a progress journal, then you can actually end up repeating the same thing or testing the same thing over again at another time down the road that you've already tested, and you can end up wasting a lot of time, money, and energy because it didn't work the first time, so it might not work the second time. Or maybe you say, I'm going to try it again because we didn't do the test right the first time, and now that we have a better knowledge base, it makes more sense to try it again. So now that you have the 7 steps, I want to give you a couple ideas on what you can A/B test. Okay? So in marketing, there's 3 things that we love to A/B test. Number 1 is our headlines. Number 2 is our sales copy, and number 3 is our call to action. So once we've clearly identified our target market, the sales funnel we're going to build to reach out to that target market, all of the ways that we're going to drive traffic to that sales funnel, and then how we're going to follow up with people once they've gotten into the sales funnel to make sure we're setting up sales for success. Now we like to test those 3 things. So headlines, the sales copy within the headlines, and the call to action. There's other things you can test too. There's a whole bunch of other things you can test with marketing. I just wanted to give you the big 3 that we always focus on every single time, but that will get you really far. Sales, there's a whole bunch of different things you can test. You can test your different methods of follow-up, text message follow-up, phone follow-up, what other, email follow-up, all the different things that you can follow up one-to-one, right, to take that lead and move it down the pipeline. The other things you can test is your scripts and dialogues, right? You can test your sales presentation. You can test your objection handlers. There's a whole bunch of different things you can test there. And for service, you can test your onboarding process, your scripts and your dialogues that you're using with your onboarding process, how clear it is. You can test and get survey feedback. You can test your outreach frequency, ticket frequency, how fast you're getting back to your customers. So all these things you should be A/B testing in order to apply the CANI principle to your business. And this is how you go from a okay business to a good business, and then eventually a business that becomes a good business and make it a great business. I hope you found this video helpful. There's a lot to unpack in this video, so I'd highly recommend that you watch this video at least 3 to 5 times. And if you're curious about the stat tracker that we use, you can actually download a free version of this, an ebook that we have. It's called our Sales and Marketing Playbook, or another branding we have out there right now is the Sales Acceleration Blueprint. But you can download this for free by clicking the link below if you're in this video. And you go to isaiahcolton.com and you can download the free ebook called the Sales Acceleration Blueprint. And in there, there's a section in the beginning where you can actually check out the Sales and Marketing Tracker. And this is what we use to track everything that's important in our business. I hope you enjoyed this video. Share it, like it, comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.